In motorsport, it's referred to as the great equalizer, but in games, there's nothing equal about it. Some games can look stunning in the wet, some comical. A puddle in one game might see you aquaplaning off the track. Another game might not recognize the existence of puddles at all. Today we are taking a look at rain in 12 of the biggest hitting racing games, separating the contenders from the pretenders. Let's start this out with a game that set the standard way back in 2014 on PS4. This is Driveclub. Take a look at this footage. To this day, this game still looks amazing. It's not just the rain flying through the air. It's the reflective puddles on the track, the drops on the camera, the mist in the distance, and in-car. It just keeps getting better. Everything just looks right. The rocks and the materials surrounding the track have that wet sheen. The opponent cars kick up a nice spray. But it's what happens when you enter the tunnel that is really special. Most games will nail the rain stopping after you enter a tunnel. That's a low-hanging fruit. But watch this next bit closely. The rain has stopped, but the wipers are still wet. They shake off just a little water on each stroke after you have entered the tunnel. It's a brilliant little detail, but the developer's attention didn't stop there. You'll notice the streaks of water on the side of the window when we exit the tunnel. These increase with speed, but the star of the show here is the standing water on the windshield. Not only do the wipers smear it across the screen, but it also gets thrown around with G-force. Watch the water creep from the side of the screen into view when we turn. This quality of rain back in the day was phenomenal. Phenomenal, but not perfect. You will see that while cars do produce visible spray, the spray doesn't affect your own car. You don't see the spray hit the windshield, and it might look like there are puddles on some tracks, but they are just visual too. But still, they did all this on a PS4, and the icing on the cake is that it's also dynamic. You can start off a race in beautiful sunshine only to have it finish in a rainstorm. Sure, the track just gets more wet or more dry, there's no such thing as a drying line here, but all in all, this is the benchmark set way back in 2014 by which all rain in driving games is measured. First up to be measured then is this 2020 release of Project Cars 3, and well, let's be honest, this is no Driveclub. The streaks of rain I could live with, they actually look alright, but what are these sinking cloud things? Let's jump on board and, let's jump on board. Damn it, okay, third time's a charm. Let's jump on board. That's better. These are absolute monsoon conditions, and that lightning is a real nice touch. Visually, this is not terrible. The spray the cars produce looks okay, and everything is realistically wet, down to the opponent's cars being covered in water. Those water snakes on the windshield though are a bit much, and while we are seeing some smearing of the water due to the wipers, that's where the realism ends. The spray from opponent cars doesn't appear on your own windshield, and what drops there are don't react at all to G-force. On the plus side though, the weather is dynamic. The rain can ruin your picnic at any time, which is cool, and the puddles do realistically affect your driving, which is a nice touch. Overall, it's a strong effort. So how does it stack up against our 2014 benchmark? Here is the scorecard. It's designed so that the final score comes down to a mixture of rain visuals and wet track physics. Already on the board you can see our scores for Driveclub. It got top marks for visuals and weather, but scored only 1 point for puddles and drying line. This is because Driveclub's puddles are just wet patches that last longer. They kinda form a little bit of a drying line, but they don't produce the aquaplaning effect of real puddles, so only 1 point in each of those columns. And with nothing extra to point out, the benchmark is set at 10 points. Project Cars 3 from the cockpit is an easy 4 graphically. The rain on the windshield is convincing enough, and if you don't look too hard enough, the reflections on track look great. But everything breaks down outside the car. The spray looks a bit comical, and those rain fog things are terrible. A solid 3 for visuals overall then. Dynamic weather is pretty good and works well, but it changes way too fast. Races can go from bone dry to water slide in half a lap. 2 out of 3 there. The drying line in Project Cars 3 is decent, but areas where the tracks have puddles dry up really fast. The puddles themselves though are fun to splash through and have a real effect on the driving physics. That's a 2 for the drying line and a 2 for the puddles then. A strong 9 overall for Project Cars 3, but I think we can do a little bit better. This is F1 2021 at Suzuka. No windshields to study here, but we still have water snakes. This time they can be seen streaking across the halo, and unfortunately, that's about as dynamic as the water in this game gets. If you focus on just one dot of water, you will see that it just stays there. Chillin' for the entire race, just taking a ride on an F1 car. At least the drops on the camera roll down the lens, but nothing else reacts to speed or g-force. And those puddles you see everywhere look dangerous, don't they? Real F1 wouldn't even let the pace car go through those, but these cars don't seem to be affected by them at all. The spray is nicely done though, and the cars leave nice tracks behind the wheels. It's just a pity that this game has no drying line, because that's a huge part of F1 racing. But even if it did, I could not show it to you. You can set the weather to dynamic all you like. The game will very dynamically display the exact same weather for the entire race most of the time. Let's give F1 2021 a 3 for visuals, and let's be generous and say a 3 for weather. Because when the weather does change, it's handled well enough. But for the rest of the scores, it's just a miserly single point for technically having puddles, even if they are just shiny bits on the track. That brings us to a total of 7. We're getting worse. RaceRoom racing experience. This is a great sim, so this rain is going to be... Wait, this rain looks like not rain. Maybe we try some different views? Yeah, let's just head to the scorecard. It's zeros across the board, isn't it? But I did check in a point for weather, because I'm pretty sure at one point when I was driving I saw a cloud, and that's where rain comes from, right? I'm pretty sure I'm right. Since the circuit races aren't cutting it, let's leave the road completely behind with Dirt Rally 2.0. Initially, this looks promising. Lots of rain on the windshield, tons of water on the side window, and the wipers are going crazy. But if we look hard enough, the cracks appear. While rain on the side of the window is affected by speed, nothing else is. Any nice shiny puddles you see on the road don't have much effect on the car, even on tarmac. Here, you can see what looks like a dry line with puddles here and there, but overall grip levels don't seem to change much. The spray from the wheel is nice, but from this view we can see another issue. Drops of water that we clearly saw on the bonnet in the other view are gone. The car looks dry. To give Dirt Rally 2.0 a score for graphics, it's again going to be another boring 3. Nothing too bad, but nothing impressive either. Weather, that's a 1. It has varying weather, but it's not dynamic. What you select in the event screen is what you get. Drying line is also a 1. Sometimes there's a visual dry line, and that's better than nothing. Same goes for puddles. This all gives us a disappointing total of 6. Let's try this all again with a more recent rally game, WRC 10. First impressions are good. Look at those trees blowing about, there's a full-on storm going on. This is going to be epic. But then it's just not. There is only a minor amount of water falling onto the windshield and a few dots of static water where the wipers don't reach. We aren't even getting the dynamic side window action that we saw in Dirt Rally 2.0. But thankfully, things get a bit better outside the car. That fog effect that rain produces, which is all too often overdone in racing games, looks nice here, and better yet, the tarmac looks great as the rain eases and the road starts to dry out. And those leaves and trees blowing about at the beginning were a really nice touch. But again, it's not all rosy. That tyre spray that looks adequate here looks very out of place just a few minutes later in the run on a more or less dry track. And while it's great to have puddles that act like puddles, the splash they produce is just stupid looking. So what we have here is another mixed bag. WRC has some nice graphical touches, but the star of driving in the rain needs to be the rain hitting the windshield. In WRC, that is the weakest part of the experience. Together with some weak spray effects, the graphical score is a sad 2. Weather though, that's a 3, and for a rally game we can say that a drying track is as good as a drying line, as you don't do laps in rallying that would burn in a dry line, but you can certainly feel the grip come back as the water levels subside. Puddles, another 2. You know when you've hit one. That leaves us with a 9. A pretty good score overall, and showing how a good simulation of rain can overcome poor graphical choices. Wait, Project Cars 2? Didn't we already have Project Cars 3? Well, yeah, we did, but as we covered in our criminally underperforming review of the game, the second and third games are really aimed at different audiences and should be treated as different in their own right. This doesn't extend to the rain though, it's near identical. Same water snakes, same drops on the windshield, same lack of g-force or wind affecting those drops, same decent puddle effects, same terrible looking spray. Same scores then, another solid 9. This is the pinnacle of simulation racing, iRacing. Nothing simulates motorsports better than this. Just ask any iRacer. You know rain is going to be epic in this. Does look a little dry though. But I'm sure that dude in orange is sweating bullets right now. That's gotta count as moisture on the track, right? Wait, I got it. I know the problem here. We haven't got the next update yet. Everybody knows that all problems with iRacing are fixed if you just wait for the next update. While we wait for that, let's throw iRacing the same bone we threw RaceRoom. Now here is an impressive achievement. This is rFactor 2. Amazing, isn't it? You don't get graphics like these overnight. This game has been in development for over a decade and it shows. We're at Interlagos in Brazil, home of the Brazilian Grand Prix. I'm going to have to freeze frame this one because I don't think you're all appreciating the unique beauty of this title. rFactor 2's physics model is so detailed that they have modeled the giant Brazilian raindrop. Just look at the size of those things. Look at that one. It's half the size of the car. You won't find this level of detail in any other sim. It's disappointing then that when in car you don't always get the chance to marvel at this level of detail. Drops on the windshield are as tiny in this game as they are in any other and just as stuck in place. And I still can't figure out if that is water spray coming off the back of those cars or maybe they're in serious need of a tune-up. The drying line is pretty well implemented, but puddles seem non-existent. Though to be fair, with the wet track looking like a lake, how would I even know if puddles were there? To the scoreboard then, and graphically this game gets a 2, and that's only because those individual raindrops on the windshield do look nice. And it's also a 2 for weather. Sure, it's there and works as advertised, but transitions between weather patterns are very clunky. The drying line though, that's a clear 2, but puddles? Got to give that a 0 there, I can't find them at all. It's a 6 for rFactor 2 then, in a tie for worst score yet. Which is a shame because rFactor 2 is genuinely a blast in the wet. I really enjoyed my time recording this. Next up is Automobilista 2, and hey look at that, water snakes and dots of rain looking suspiciously like several other games we have already seen. It's almost as if several of these games use the same off-the-shelf game engine. Which of course they do. Automobilista 2 has the same rain and weather as the Project Cars games because under the hood, it basically is those games. They all share the same code base. You get the same rain producing the same spray right down to the same puddles. It makes for a boring comparison and results in the same boring scorecard. With only 2 games left and Driveclub still clinging to the top spot, we need to start pulling out the big guns, and graphically at least, they don't get any bigger than Gran Turismo 7. The first thing you might notice, apart from the seamless fog effect of the rain, are those crisp dots on the windshield. But what I love about them isn't the way they appear, it's the way they move. As we saw in Driveclub, these water droplets react to both speed and g-force. Go around a corner and they get flung off the windshield to the side. Turn the opposite direction and they get flung off in the opposite way. And when the rain eventually stops, they don't just disappear. The ones that are big enough gradually slide off the windshield onto g-force, but the smallest drops get left behind, getting smaller and smaller until they evaporate away. It's a beautiful effect, but it's not perfect. If we take it back, we can see that there just isn't enough drops of water, and we are totally lacking any pooling effect where the wipers don't reach. Plus, in the perfect world of Gran Turismo, water perfectly beads up on the windshield, and never ever gets smeared across it. Outside is another mixed bag of absolutely beautiful and needs work. We get these amazing shots of headlights coming through the spray, a spray that deserves a mention all of its own. We'll get back to that. For now, take a look at these realistic tire tracks left on the rain-soaked asphalt and the way the headlines shine on each part of the track, depending on water levels. It's all done so well that it makes the poorly done elements really stand out. This splash effect might not be the worst effect in the video, but it doesn't stand up to the rest of the visuals on show. When the rain stops though, the change to sunshine is so smooth that you often don't even notice. You're racing under this beautiful blue sky and you remember, wait, wasn't it a full-on rainstorm just like a few laps ago? It's easily the best weather system we have yet seen. And of course, with the sunshine after the rain comes a drying track. A first for GT games, and for a first go this is pretty well done. We have a clear drying line with a lot more grip and puddles left where there should be puddles. And not those pesky visual only puddles either. Watch this track water gauge on the lower left. Right now it's 1/3 full, but as we drive over the puddles it spikes and we aquaplane right into the wall with the tail of the car. It's pretty fun to try to control while driving. Now we said we would come back to that spray because there are a few things to say about it. The first is that, yeah, the track looks way too dry to produce that much spray, but otherwise, it's absolutely amazing. Not only does it appear to be shaped by the aerodynamics of the car itself, but check out this clip here. The spray is clearly being blown off the track to the right, and if we look at the track map, that's exactly what the wind is doing. That's got to be worth a bonus point, so let's head to the scorecard. First up is graphics, and while it does look great, it doesn't quite capture the rain effect like Driveclub does. Close but no cigar, it's a 4. Weather is the best yet, an easy 3. Same for the drying line and puddles. Both are great, so full points there. And for the first time, my inclusion of that extras column is justified because having the spray affected by wind is pretty cool. I'll point for that. That means GT7 finally delivers a rain experience better than our 2014 PS4 game. But there is still one more row at the bottom of this chart. This is Assetto Corsa Competizione, and somewhere in front of us there are cars, I promise you that. Kudos to Kunos for not being afraid to give gamers a realistic spray experience. When racing drivers say they could not see anything in the spray, they mean it. But as cool as this is, something's not quite right here. As soon as I hit the track, my eye is distracted and I've figured out why. Let's slow the footage down of the wipers so I can illustrate the first issue. The wipers don't actually do anything. On the wiper downstroke, it starts out in sync, removing water, but then overtakes the water texture and we end up seeing water both in front and behind the wiper. But then when it comes back up, it's using the force or something to push the water about 30 centimeters ahead of itself. It just looks odd in motion. But even if that was fixed, we are left with the water droplets themselves. They are black to the point that streaks of water running across the side window just looks like used oil. If there is black water falling out of your sky, I'd suggest you move. All this is a great shame because otherwise the in-car view is great. Spray from other cars does seem to impact your own windshield, and you would have noticed that as we go around corners, pools of water on the edges of the windshield does have a small reaction to G-force. Outside the car, things are looking quite good also. Granted, the rain can sometimes look like some poor film grain effect, but it's leagues above what we have seen from some other games. The same can be said for the spray, which isn't perfect, but puts the likes of Project Cars to shame. But it's time to point out another jarring pain point, and this time it's the weather system. One thing that really stood out in GT7 was the seamless transitions between weather variants, but in ACC, well, did you catch that transition? Subtle, isn't it? But this is all just graphics. On the physical side, ACC doesn't disappoint. It has a well done dry line with puddles and little rivers of water that run across the track, but for me the coolest thing is the tyre modelling. If we pick up the action here, we can see that the rain is just starting to fall and our tyres are in their optimal working range. In fact, our fronts might be a little too hot, judging by the little bits of yellow appearing at the top of the tyre icons on the lower right of the screen. Now let's jump ahead. You can see the track has far more water on it now, judging from the spray off the BMW in front. Now rain is going to do two things. It reduces the temperature of the track surface, but also reduces grip. Both of these things should lower the temperature of the tyres, and in ACC, that's exactly what we see. Before, the tyres were on the verge of overheating. Now they're almost too cold to be effective. Brilliant stuff. This is the game that nearly won our racing damage face-off, but lost eventually to Beam MG. With no Beam appearing on this comparison, is it time for ACC to get the W? Let's give ACC a score. Graphically, this is a tough one because I would not say it looks as good as GT7, as it has some obvious flaws in its water presentation. But clearly it looks better than most games, and it's doing more with its windshield physics than GT7. Graphically, it's getting a very generous 4. Weather though. This is a painful one because the weather system itself is great, except for how it changes. A point needs to be taken away for that jarring change between overcast and sunshine. It's a 2. Drying line and puddles, an easy 2 for each. No complaints with any of those. Extras though, I'm glad I threw in a bonus column in there because as soon as I noticed the effect rain has on tyres in ACC, I knew I needed to give ACC a point for that. It's great stuff to see. This gives the game a total score of 11, falling just a little short of our champion, GT7. Only 2 games managed to better the benchmark score of 10 set by Driveclub, which should really ram home the point of just how great that game was for its time. Its score of 5 for the graphics wasn't beaten, and its near-perfect weather system didn't leave any scope for more modern games to improve upon it. An easier win for modern games would have been sound. Jump into any car in a rainstorm and you don't need to look out the window to know it's raining. You hear it. While most games alter the track noise a little in wet conditions, it was only Gran Turismo 7 that modelled the sound of rain falling on the car. This could easily have been another bonus point for GT7. All in all, I'm actually a little disappointed by the state of rain in racing games. You have games like rFactor 2, which feel great to drive but are an absolute abomination visually. Or games like GT7 that do a lot right visually but miss the little details that made Driveclub so realistic back in the day. One of these days we're going to have a single game with the windshield of Driveclub, the weather system of Gran Turismo 7 and the tyre modelling of ACC, and it's going to be glorious.